Hello and welcome to this edition of Back in History. In this edition, we'll take you back in time to the story of Dennis Osadebay, the first and last premier of the Midwestern region of Nigeria, who narrowly escaped being killed in what many have described as Nigeria's most bloody coup. It was Nigeria's first military coup. It happened when Nigeria was barely 5 years old as an independent nation. Several persons were killed, including 2 of the 4 premiers at the time, and the innocence of the new country was stained, and badly at that. Osadebay lost his seat as premier, but had his life intact. He is remembered for many good deeds for the short period of time that he stayed in office. Dennis Osadebay was born on 29th June 1911. He was born in Asaba, in then Southern Protectorate of Nigeria. Asaba is in present-day Delta State of Nigeria. Asaba is the capital of Delta. When Dennis Osadebay became of age for formal education, he was taken to Asaba Government School, where he was enrolled for his elementary education. Upon completion of his primary education, he gained admission into Sacred Heart School, Calabar, and later moved to Hope Wardell Training Institute, also in Calabar. Calabar is in present-day Cross River State. Done with secondary education, the young, vibrant, and ambitious Dennis took employment as a customs officer. He was first posted to Lagos and later he was posted to Port Harcourt in present-day River State. He also worked in Calabar as a customs officer. He worked in the customs for 10 years, and in the course of his work, he came in contact with several persons who had acquired education in universities abroad. His working in customs gave him tremendous exposure and kept him up to date with happenings around the world. Dennis then took the decision to further his studies away from his country. At that time, most young Nigerians who desired to further their studies abroad settled for the United Kingdom. Nigeria was colonized by Britain, and the British culture, way of life, and educational system were familiar issues frequently discussed in Nigeria. Dennis thus settled for the decision to further his studies in the United Kingdom. He applied and gained admission to study law in the United Kingdom and was found worthy for admission. He then left Nigeria by sea to the United Kingdom in 1940. While studying law in the United Kingdom, he began to develop love for poetry and started writing poems, and most of his writings were published, particularly in Nnamdi Azikiwe's West African Pilot and other widely circulating newspapers at the time. He used his poems to portray the African story and also highlight the ills of colonial domination by foreign powers. Osadebay later returned to his home country of Nigeria, having been called to the English bar and licensed to practice law as barrister at law. He went into practice in the various courts in Nigeria. At this time, most courts in Nigeria were manned by Britons who were employed as magistrates and judges by the colonial administration. At this time too, Nigeria was yet to gain the status of an independent state. Osadebay's law firm was located in Aba in present-day Abia State of Nigeria. Osadebay then took the decision to combine politics with his law practice. In 1944, he joined forces with like minds to form the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, NCNC. The leader of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons was Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who later became Nigeria's first indigenous president. Osadebay served as the national legal advisor to the NCNC. While in this capacity, he advocated vociferously for the grant of independence to Nigeria. He maintained both in his writings and in his speeches that the time had come for Africans to be allowed to take the destiny of their homes in their hands. He was a well-known nationalist. The colonial government eventually saw the need to allow Nigerian citizens some space to participate in the government of their country. Regions were created and premiers emerged. The premiers were to work with regional legislative houses. The legislative houses were known as regional houses of assembly. In 1951, Dennis Osadebay contested for a seat in the Western Region House of Assembly. The dominant political party in the Western Region at the time was Awolowo's party, the Action Group, and it was not going to be easy for anyone from another political party to win election into the Western Region's House of Assembly. But Dennis Osadebay campaigned vigorously and won under the platform of the NCNC. The Action Group had the majority in the House, and Osadebay became the leader of opposition. Osadebay had the ability to associate freely with other members of the House, notwithstanding their political parties. He soon became everybody's man. He was very strong in debate and made poignant contributions on the floor of the legislature. He was an intelligent man whose contributions could hardly be ignored. He played politics in the House and politics in the field. In 1960, Osadebay emerged as the Speaker of the Western Region's House of Assembly. He did his work creditably to the admiration of many. He also served as the President of the Nigerian Senate. He was succeeded by Nwafo Orizu as the President of the Senate. Nwafo Orizu was the Senate President when the 1966 coup was executed. It is recorded that it was Nwafo Orizu, as President of the Senate, that called on the most senior military officer in the country at the time to take over and form a government following the assassination of the Prime Minister. In about 1960, 61, and 62, there was the consistent agitation for the extrication of the people of present-day Delta and Edo states from the Western Region of Nigeria, and the calls had become really loud. The people of these areas needed a separate identity and thus called for the creation of a region for them. They maintained that the Western Region was rightly created for the Yoruba people of Nigeria with their unique culture, language, religion, way of life, and that the people of Delta and Edo should have their separate identity. The federal government of Nigeria eventually hearkened to the calls and created the Midwestern region from the Western region in 1963. This was a significant milestone in the lives of the people of present-day Edo and Delta states. With the creation of a region, there was the need for a new premier. The lot then fell on Dennis Osadebay, who emerged as the first premier of the Midwestern region. He carried on with his work creditably and laid the foundation for the development of the new region. He created roads to open up the region and built government institutions to allow for takeoff of the new region. He invested heavily in education and built new primary and secondary schools. He also invested in tertiary education. He encouraged education of the girl child and also encouraged and invested heavily in vocational education. He continued to move his region forward and had no premonition of what was awaiting him and his brother premiers and the entire country until January 1966. This day marked the end of regional government in Nigeria and also marked the end of the tenure of Dennis Osadebay as the premier of the Midwestern region. What happened on this day was a bloody coup d'etat, carefully planned and executed by 7 military majors of the Nigerian army in conjunction with other lower-ranking soldiers. The leader of the coup was Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzegu, whose area of assignment for the coup was the Northern region. Some reports say that the leader of the coup was Major Emmanuel Ifeajuna. Ifeajuna was to take charge of Lagos area in conjunction with others. But in his book Why We Struck, one of the masterminds of the coup, Major Adewale Ademologun, is of the position that the leader of the coup was Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzegu. His narrative in the book From Planning to Execution is woven around Nzegu. Whatever may be the correct version of the leadership of the coup plot, what remains indisputable is the fact that on January 15, 1966, a group of young, vibrant majors of the Nigerian army, all of them foreign trained, staged the first military coup in Nigeria and killed several persons in the process. The Prime Minister was killed, His Excellency Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. His Minister of Finance, Chief Festus Okotie-Eboh, was also killed. Other highly placed government functionaries and military top brass were also killed. The coup was staged simultaneously on the same night in the 4 regions. The plan was to eliminate all the premiers, namely Sir Ahmadu Bello of the Northern Region, Chief Ladoke Akintola of the Western Region, Dr. Michael Okpara of the Eastern Region, and Dennis Osadebay of the Midwestern Region. Soldiers were assigned to the 4 regions, and the mission was well defined, namely to kill the 4 premiers. It was in the dead of the night. Nzegu led his troops into the residence of the Premier of the North and met him sitting with his wife Hafsatu. The Premier was shot and killed on the spot. His wife Hafsatu was also shot and killed. The mission for the North was thus achieved 100%. The Premier of the Western Region was also killed, Chief Ladoke Akintola, but 2 premiers were saved. They were Premier of the Eastern Region, Dr. Michael Okpara, and the Premier of the Midwestern Region, Dennis Osadebay. They were saved by providence. Reports have it that those assigned to kill them did not keep to their promise. Other reports say that following the killing of the Prime Minister and others, information went out to the regions and military formations in the regions through landlines, and the coup plotters were resisted by loyal forces, leading to the break of the day and the sparing of the lives of the 2 premiers. There are also some theories concerning why they were not killed, but the truth remains that the night of 15th January 1966 was a bloody night. It was a night that brought sorrow to families and left scars that have not been healed in Nigeria till today. As noted earlier, Dennis Osadebay survived the coup in a way that can best be described as miraculous. He was marked for elimination, and if the coup plotters had reached him, he would have been killed, just as the other premiers were killed. Following the elimination of the Prime Minister and other key officials, Nigeria's First Republic was brought to a tragic end. Though the coup plotters were unable to take over the reins of power, a new set of leaders emerged with the most senior military officer at the time, General Agui Ironsi, emerging as the head of state of Nigeria. Ironsi appointed military governors to take over the reins of leadership at the regions. Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Dumegu Ojukwu was appointed to serve as military governor of the Eastern Region, while Lieutenant Colonel Adekunle Fajuyi was appointed as military governor of the Western Region. Lieutenant Colonel Hassan Katsina was appointed as the military governor of the Northern Region, while Lieutenant Colonel David Ejo was appointed to serve as the military governor of the Midwestern Region, where Dennis Osadebay had earlier served as the premier. In essence, Dennis Osadebay had effectively been removed from the office of premier by circumstances beyond his control. He then lived a quiet life and stayed on for many more years and saw Nigeria in its many faces. He passed on to the great beyond on 26th December 1994. At that time, Nigeria was still under the clutches of the military rule, with General Sani Abacha as the military head of state. Osadebay was given a state funeral, and encomiums of good deeds were rendered by people from across the Federation of Nigeria at his funeral. A number of institutions and roads in Nigeria have been named after him. The name Dennis Chukwude Osadebay shall continue to be mentioned in the history books of Nigeria, Africa, and the world at large for many more years to come. Thanks for watching this edition of Back in History, and do remember to subscribe to the channel or follow the page for regular notification on every new video. I am your friend and host Ekeminudim, wishing you the best of time as you continue to accompany me on this mission for the documentation and promotion of the history of Nigeria and the continent of Africa.